The following is a presentation of The Day.
Welcome to our debate for the Old Lyme 1st Selectman race. My name is Erica MOSER, and I'm a reporter here at The Day and a member of The Day editorial board, and I will be moderating this debate in the absence of our recently retired editorial page editor, Paul Shoemaker. Taking part in today's debate is the Republican candidate for Selectman, Tim Griswold, and his Democratic challenger, Martha Shoemaker, who sits on the Region 18 Board of Education. Under our debate format, the candidate responding to a question will have 1 minute to answer. The opponent gets 90 seconds to respond, and the candidate who originally took the questions 30 seconds to rebut. Our timekeeper is Carlos Virgen, Assistant Managing Editor for Audience Development at The Day, and he will hold up a sign alerting the candidates when they have 15 seconds left. We have questions that have come from both reporters here at The Day and from some of our readers, and some are a combination of that. So we will alternate between which candidate answers each question first, and we'll begin with 1 minute opening statements, starting with Mr. Griswold.
Well, good day, Erica. Thank you for hosting this. I am running for first selectman because I have been in this position for a total of 16 years over a span of time. I know that it is a very challenging position, and I think that what is extraordinary is that the Board of Selectmen has 4 candidates. I am the only one who has served on the Board of Selectmen. Also, I think when you compare myself and my opponent, I have served on not only the Board of Selectmen, but Board of Finance and other town agencies. And so, to my knowledge, my opponent has not had any town government service. So I think that that's a big situation in this job. You need that background, and I think I bring a lot to the table for that reason.
Ms. Shoemaker?
I decided to run for the first selectman's position because I'm concerned that our town government is lacking the leadership that I know that I can provide. If elected, I will create a transparent administration that will provide information to the administration, provide information to the taxpayers in a more informative way than our current administration. I'll provide relevant, detailed information at town meetings. I will provide my fellow selectmen with materials prior to meetings so that they have time to be informed of agenda items before a meeting start date. During the past 2 years, little progress has been made on projects that Mr. Griswold indicated would be completed during his 2-year term. Projects identified by Mr. Griswold as consistently progressing at Board of Selectmen meetings, but in our reality stalled. An example of this is the current realization that Old Lyme's cybersecurity insurance policies ended on July 1st. Tim has known about this since February. This is a sign of poor leadership and not caring for our constituents. Mr. Griswold has not listened to his constituents.
Thank you. That's time. Our first question, we're starting with Mr. Griswold. Old Lyme will be receiving American Rescue Plan funding from the federal government in 2 tranches this year and next. How would you like to see that money spent? You have 60 seconds.
We have formed a committee comprised of people from various aspects of town who will be evaluating how we will do this. It's complicated. It can be given to nonprofits, businesses, individuals, and certain projects. So we need to do the groundwork before we make any promises. So our committee has met twice, and it will be continuing to meet. And we know that we want to use this money to benefit the most people, so that it's a very exacting process. The rules are not well defined, and so part of it will be, is that particular grant eligible? So we are moving forward on this, and we want to get funds into people's hands as quickly as possible, but we also want to do it with extreme care.
Ms. Shoemaker?
There is a committee that has been formed, and I do believe that the committee was formed rather late, 6 months into the process after we learned that the money was coming our way. Currently, the first installment sits in a low interest bearing account, and the second disbursement will hit us in March of 2022. We have a committee, and it was set up over a 2-month period in August and September. and just had its first meeting in early October. Other towns have already begun not only planning but putting things into motion. So we're really 6 months behind some of our fellow neighbors and neighboring towns. We need to report back information to the players to let them know what we're doing. The first reporting date is in January, or we will lose out on some of our funding.
Mr. Griswold?
Well, first, the money is not in an interest-bearing account. It bears no interest. And the funds arrived in June, so that money has not been sitting around for 6 months. This is a process that is complicated, and there are reporting requirements, and we aim to abide by them.
So you both talked a bit about process for the American Rescue Plan funds, but I'll give you each 60 more seconds because I want to get a bit into what you want to see happen with that process. So, Mr. Griswold, you talked about wanting to do something that benefits the most people. So for both of you, 60 seconds each, what would you like to see the committee do? What are some, specific organizations or you would like to see benefit from the funds, or specific problems in town you'd like to see addressed? Mr. Griswold?
Yes, we want to find, we have been talking with some agencies that might help us underwrite the kinds of things such as a business loan or a business grant. It would be very difficult for a small town to be able to give funds out directly to individuals, businesses, and nonprofits. It's very complex. There are organizations who are willing to help us do the work to be a buffer between us and the recipients. We can also get clarity on a project or two that might be eligible. When you carve up a total of $2 million over 2 years in a number of ways, it may not amount to much. So we must evaluate how much we want to give as a maximum, minimum, that sort of thing.
Ms. Shoemaker?
I know that Ledgelight has requested 1% from all of the towns that it serves, so I would hope that we would certainly provide that to the Ledgelight Health Foundation. We also have many projects involving infrastructure and nonprofit groups that also will benefit from this money. To name a few, I'm sure that LYSB and the Art Association and Florence Griswold Museum would all benefit from some money if we had it to give them. It needs to work for the entire town.
Thank you. Next question, we're starting again with Ms. Shoemaker. And this touches a bit on what Mr. Griswold said in his opening statement. He noted that you've been on the school board but don't have municipal experience, and has said in the past, with everything going on, that he feels it would be difficult for you to step in and handle everything. He said he feels, the first selectman needs that background. Some letter writers have also called for voters to go with experience. What is your response to these concerns, and how do you feel that having a new perspective in this seat could benefit Old Lyme?
I think having a fresh face in Old Lyme would definitely benefit the town at this time. I have had experience in the local sector as 4 years on the Board of Education, and I served as 12 years as a union leader for the AFT Connecticut. I also served on their Executive Vice President's Board and rewrote their policies while I was on that committee. I believe that a good leader, and I believe I have the strength of such, can lead the team. Someone once said to me, this job is not rocket science, but if it was, you'd find the curriculum and you would do it.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, you have 90 seconds.
Well, certainly being an educator is a laudable profession. Being a union representative and on the school board, it must be complicated when it comes to handling union negotiations. But I really think that no local experience will be a handicap. There is just so much. You have every day is different, and these problems, there are probably 10 or 12 projects and other issues. And having been on the Board of Selectmen for 16 years, and before that 15 years on the Board of Finance, this gives me a great advantage. Budget is critical, and I know the school budget is a process that the Board of Education handles. So, but I think that it's really going to be a handicap, and serving both as a representative on the school board and the first selectman of the town is really, I think, a problem. There's a lot of meetings at night that the selectmen have, other meetings, and I think that trying to do both, it will be nearly impossible, and I just don't see how it's going to work.
Ms. Shoemaker, your response in 30 seconds.
My current position has me working with project management, and I handle multiple projects in my current position in an engineering firm in Old Lyme. And as far as multiple meetings, as a teacher, I have juggled meetings as a union leader on state and local levels for years, and I can handle the meeting schedule, believe me.
Thank you. Our next question, we're starting with Mr. Griswold. After earlier bids for the project to bring sewers to several beach communities in Old Lyme came back too high at $18.4 million and $17.5 million, the town split up the project into 3 proposals and went out to bid again. The lower of the 2 new bids is $14.1 million, but this still exceeds the $10 million estimate from the engineering firm. You've talked about finding federal grants, using American Rescue Plan funding, and getting money from the federal infrastructure bill as potential ways to find more money for this. The federal infrastructure bill being if that passes. So, but what's your plan if these options don't pan out, or if that doesn't add up to enough money for the sewer project?
Well, the sewer project involves 4 entities, 3 private beaches and the town of Old Lyme representing Sound View. We have intermunicipal agreements with the City of New London. We will also have another one with East Lyme and Waterford to use their pipes and pump stations. Yes, the bids came in very high. We know that materials are very costly. We're speaking to Congressman Courtney's office and Senator Murphy's office about potential other funds. We will likely have to have all the parties in agreement to move forward, because if one of the entities were to not move forward, then the others would have to pick up the slack. The WPCA is involved, and this is going to take some time, and we have to be very careful, and it's too early to tell where we're headed.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
Can I ask you to repeat the question? Sorry, it was multi-part.
Yes. After earlier bids for the project to bring sewers to several beach communities came in, that was at $18.4 million and $17.5 million. The town split up the project into 3 proposals, went out to bid. The lower of the bids is $14.1 million, which still exceeds the $10 million estimate. And your opponent has talked about different ways, potential options for finding more money, such as using American Rescue Plan funding, finding federal grants, and getting money from the federal infrastructure bill if that passes. But what's your plan if those options don't pan out, or if those options don't bring in enough money?
Well, first of all, all of the stakeholders will have available to them a 20-year loan at 2%. To make it a little bit more affordable for the homeowners themselves on their portion. Also, the Clean Water Fund will pay 25% of the project, but the project needs to keep progressing to cover that, for that 25% to cover it. We have to make sure that we keep the project going so we don't lose those millions of dollars that are available through the Clean Water Fund. I think that one of the most important things, is that I have the ability to develop relationships with the state reps, which I've done before through AFT Connecticut, to find ways, creative ways, that we can help with the funding for this project.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold?
Well, I think that we are under a DEEP consent order, so we will solicit their help as well. They have been right at our side all the way along the line, and so we all need to work together, because this is an important matter, and hopefully everyone will stick together and get it done.
One more follow-up question on this. You had said, Mr. Griswold, that it's likely you need to have all parties in agreement to move forward. If there's an issue with having all parties in agreement or with the funding, what would you see happening next? Would this have to go out to a referendum again?
Let us say one of the private beaches said, we're not participating. Well, the shared infrastructure, which is the collection pipe, the pump station, and a force main going to East Lyme, that is what we're talking about at this stage. Then after that, there are the gravity sewers that each of the 4 beaches would have to install. So it's been worked out. There's a cost-sharing agreement on how to cover the costs and how to cover the operating expenses. So we need all those entities in there. If one drops out, it's 25% of the pool that would be missing. The DEP might come in, and I don't know what they would do. But so I think the solution would be to get some additional funding from state or federal sources because we can't afford to have this thing come to a halt.
Ms. Shoemaker, 30 seconds for your response.
I would say that this situation has been going on for 40 years, and what I would like to know from Mr. Griswold, and I'll give him my time, is what happens, though, if a beach drops out?
Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Griswold?
Clearly, the beach would be in hot water with the DEP. There are these consent orders, so who knows what penalties might come along. But I think dealing with the 3 beaches, they are committed to doing it. Now, if they have to go back for a referendum for more commitment from their residents may balk. And so that's a danger. But I think the group that's been working on this for the past couple of years that I've been involved has been sticking together and trying to, we've accomplished a lot, but there's a lot more to do.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question, we're starting with Ms. Shoemaker. You've said that you're running to bring more transparency and accountability to local government. What are some specific ways where you think that transparency and accountability are lacking?
There is a lack of transparency because our taxpayers request information and it's not given. Recently, when we needed to make some accommodations in our budget for overages in the police budget, the information was not there to provide to taxpayers when they asked some very important questions of how did we get here. I also found that back in a day article from 2008, the same exact thing happened in a referendum when we had overages for the town hall project. Again, the information wasn't at the town meeting, and taxpayers balked and said, where's the information? We have very educated people in Old Lyme, and they deserve to have the information presented to them before they vote on any matter.
Mr. Griswold, your response?
I think it's in the eye of the beholder in terms of the information. Many items that go before a town meeting have a small amount of information, and if people want more, they could certainly come ahead of time and ask for it. For the most part, these meetings for appropriations are fairly low key. I think the one in particular about the police, it was there were a total of about 15 people in the audience, and I think eight of them, which were all banded together, voted it down, and the other people voted it for it. So it's not exactly a high-profile issue. The information is available, and you have to balance between providing a lot of information, of which most of it is not reviewed, or you would encourage people to come in and learn about it before the meeting. So I think when we have all these matters going on, it would be quite a burden to have total information on all of these matters.
Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
I do not agree with Mr. Griswold on that. I think that people require just a simple sheet of paper with figures on it and a brief explanation. But it would be nice if it was available to people when they walked into a meeting hall that was there. Or you have the ability with technology today to put an Excel spreadsheet or something else up on a screen and explain to them why you're asking for this money.
Thank you. Our next question, we're starting with Mr. Griswold. As of 2019, the Connecticut Department of Housing said only 1.63% of housing units in Old Lyme qualify as affordable housing. You previously said you think if a sensible place could be figured out, you don't think the town would oppose affordable housing. What do you think are some sensible places in Old Lyme for affordable housing, and why hasn't there been more progress in Old Lyme on affordable housing?
Let me start out by saying the 1.9%, that is housing which is deed restricted. In addition to that, you have housing that is modestly priced either to purchase or to rent, and that is not included in the affordable housing total. I think that the locations within town exist. It is not, we do not have a list of properties that we're saying, come here, this is a great spot for affordable housing. These are private properties, and I think it would be up to the owners and the developers, as they do with a commercial property, to identify sites. So I think that we have a new Affordable Housing Commission. They are working very diligently on the Affordable Housing Plan, which will be ready next July, and we're moving ahead. I think that group will be looking for single-family lots as well as perhaps some multifamily locations.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, you have 90 seconds.
Our Affordable Housing Committee was awarded a $5,000 grant to help them develop their plan, which I believe is supposed to be done in June of 2022. I also know that we have 2 lots currently available at the McCullough property open space, and this was given to open space with the stipulations that we would build 2 homes within the 5 years that since it was given. So that is 2 spots. We need to at least indicate that we are making progress on this, and Jim Lampos and I, who are running together, have ideas that we will place forward after we do more research.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, your response, 30 seconds.
Well, I think with respect to the McCullough 2 lots, they are moving forward. Open Space is surveying the property to locate them. But I think when you consider the efforts during the prior administration and before, there's something like 5 or 6 affordable houses in town. We need to do better, and I think maybe a market rate / affordable housing project in town would really help out, where instead of talking 2 or 3, you'd have maybe 15 or 20 at a time.
Thank you. Our next question, we're starting with Ms. Shoemaker. Continuing on the topic of affordable housing, what do you think is a reasonable timeline for reaching 10% affordable housing, and would you be in favor of using tax abatements to spur affordable housing development? You have 60 seconds.
Okay. So for us to reach our goal, the mandate of 400, we would have, right now we currently have 1.47 or 147 units. There are going to have to be some creative way, and tax abatements is certainly one way to go about it. Mr. Lampos knows of some properties that could possibly have 4 or 5 units in them, which would provide us with some additional space.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, your response?
Well, I want to make it clear, when you're talking about affordable housing, it's not a mandate. People say it's a 10% mandate. That's not right. It's a goal. And when you look at the various towns in Connecticut, it's very difficult just to live up to the 10% when you have land values that are as high as they are in Old Lyme. Land costs are high, so it's very difficult to make that work for the affordable housing market. As far as abatements, that's a slippery slope. The Board of Finance was asked about that for commercial development on Hatchett's Road years ago and declined. I think that there are incentives in the way of zoning leeway and other things. Old Saybrook has moved forward with that, and I'm sure many other communities without an abatement. So I think that when you get to the tax situation, the town has actually abated on these single-family lots 100% off the land value, which therefore brings the cost down to the occupant, and the occupant owns the house, the nonprofit owns the land, and that makes it more affordable. So I think once we get the Affordable Commission in gear and they come up with a plan, then we'll be moving forward and looking for something that's more meaningful than onesie-twosies.
Thank you. And Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
Forgot.
Sorry, you have 30 seconds.
I believe that it is a mandate, and I will just stand by that.
Okay. Moving on to our next question, we're starting with Mr. Griswold. How do you think Old Lyme should plan for the future impact of floods, which are expected to become more frequent and more severe, and how would you fund any investments to help prepare for floods?
Well, we see with alarm that the flood maps from year to year get further inland and more dire predictions. So right now, FEMA does provide some mitigation funding where people will elevate houses that are in peril. But clearly, our beach community has been in effect since the 20s and 30s when they were built, very close to the water. So this is a big concern. And it's once you elevate a house, the people behind can't see as well. There are a lot of ramifications. But we have gone through some storms, and we've seen the impact from that. So if a property is damaged more than 50%, you have to comply with current building standards. So it's a conundrum, and the flood insurance is quite expensive, and it's a problem we have to reckon with.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, your response, you have 90 seconds.
So I believe that FEMA has not come out with their most recent study of the flood maps. However, right now we're currently using UConn's version. We are going to have to do some serious looking at how we can deal with climate change. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to decide how we can help the climate as well as prepare for the flooding. And so we have to start to look at ways that our town can cut back on carbon. And one of the things is our sustainability committee that is starting to put things into place. That's first. And then we can start to look at other ways that we can help neighbors who are going to be impacted by possible flooding situations.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I think we need to keep working on the flood zone issue with the communities that are vulnerable. We need to press and maybe speak with our legislators about programs that might enable homeowners who have those houses to elevate them, to protect them. And I know climate change is here, but I think our beach community is one of our most important assets, and it needs to be addressed through some funding.
Thank you. Our next question, we're starting with Ms. Shoemaker. Selectwoman Mary Jo Nozel has unsuccessfully tried more than 20 times to get your opponent to bring to vote a resolution that would identify racism as a public health crisis in town. How would you have handled this situation if you were first selectwoman? And please explain why you do or don't believe racism is a public health crisis.
Okay. So I would have handled this differently because I would respect my selectmen, my fellow selectmen. And if one of my selectmen brought something forward, like this resolution, whether or not I believed in it, I would listen to it. And I would put it on the agenda or form a committee so that we can sit down and discuss this for some great length of time. Personally, yes, I think the resolution has merits. I think that if I was in office, I would sit down with a committee. I think that people at town need to come together. At the meeting that we had last week, one of our neighbors asked for people who would like to discuss it further, and she had 18 names on her paper before the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, you have 90 seconds to respond.
I think it is a very bad mistake for the Board of Selectmen to sign a resolution stating that racism is a public health crisis. I think the ramifications of such a statement would be profound. down the road, other agencies will come in and say, you're admitting that you have a public health crisis, and therefore we are going to do thus and so forth. The school is not the town, so this has nothing to do with the school, but this is all to do with the town. The resolution also has numerous points that the selectmen would be required to do, such as ensure anti-racism principles across our leadership, staffing, and contracting, promote equity through all policy approved by the Board of Selectmen. Improve the quality of data in our town and the analysis of that data. Encourage other state, local, regional, national entities to recognize that racism is a public health crisis. Engage actively with communities of color wherever they live. So I think this thing, as was said in the meeting, is a Trojan horse. It will get us into areas that we don't need to be in. The church has a very keen interest in it, and I think it is an appropriate place for that conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, you have 30 seconds to respond.
There's empirical evidence that structural racism affects public health outcomes, and the AMA, the CDC, and the APHA, and virtually every other public health body has confirmed this. The resolution isn't about whether or not we're racist. It's about equity. Currently, we have deeds in our town that state that Negroes may not own this property. On August 3rd of 2021, the House Bill 6665 retroactively back to July 1st stated that you could change your deeds.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, we're starting with Mr. Griswold. This is a question that a reader sent to us. Police overtime expenses are out of control in Old Lyme. What will you do to make sure police coverage is adequate but also kept within budget?
Well, certainly overtime during the last couple of years has been exacerbated by the COVID situation. We wanted to we had to close the beaches for a period, then we opened them, and we were able to impose some maximum number of people, and we had to supervise that. We have a force of 6 officers, a state trooper, and a couple of part-timers. So anytime any of the officers is on disability or sick, we have to cover. So the police overtime budget was increased this past year by the Board of Finance. It's certainly administratively a requirement to have the resident state trooper watch the budget carefully, and the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. But it was adjusted for this next season and the year that we're in, and hopefully we will get a handle on it.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
So although it was adjusted, we are still over budget already for the 2021 year. And moving forward, I think we need to look more carefully at our budgetary line items when we put them into place. I would meet with Matt Weber to discuss what he believes our needs are moving forward so that we can plan better together for next year's budget for 22-23. And weekly meetings with Matt would enable us to work together to meet the needs of the community, but also to keep Matt up to date on where we are in the budget and what's happening with his. I think that if we have so much overtime, that we should be looking at hiring another trooper, perhaps even putting someone through the police academy.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold?
Hiring another trooper would be exceedingly expensive because they cost about $200,000 a year versus an officer at around $100,000 all in. And I think by having part-time officers to cover some of the shifts, we're interviewing someone this week, as a matter of fact. So I think there are ways to help out on that, but certainly it's one of those things like a snowstorm. If it happens, you have to cover it, and then we will talk with the Board of Finance.
Thank you. Next question, we are starting with Ms. Shoemaker. In addition, as we've established, in addition to running for first selectwoman, you are running for re-election to the Region 18 Board of Education. Mr. Griswold said earlier, raised a concern about the issue of a lot of meetings happening at night. So how would you handle both the timing issues of having a lot of meetings at night along with potential conflicts of interest? And have you sought a legal opinion on this matter?
I have sought a legal opinion, and I have a legal opinion from 2 attorneys who said there is no conflict of interest if I run for the Board of Selectmen and also for the Board of Education, because we are a regional school district. I will not vote on the Board of Education budget as a selectman. Currently, as far as meeting schedules go, there are 2 Board of Education meetings per month. One is a policy. I sit on the policy and committee. That is 1 meeting a month for 1 hour, and the regular Board of Education meeting, which is 1 meeting per month, can run anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, depending on what is on the agenda. I have plenty of time in my schedule to fit all my meetings in.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, your response?
We'll see. Certainly, it's very ambitious, and I think when you consider that the Board of Education budget as a portion of the town budget is around 70%, I think it's difficult to straddle both positions. So I just have a feeling that time will tell if that were to happen, but I think it's not wise to entertain both. I think she's right that there should be no conflict of interest because it's a state entity. But practically speaking, and I suppose philosophically, I think being on both sides of the town and gown, if it were myself, I wouldn't do it.
All right, Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
But Mr. Griswold is running for 2 positions on this ballot as well, and has also run for 2 positions before. So I do think that it's possible. So I'm basically just learning from the best that you can serve on 2 positions in the town.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, we are starting with Mr. Griswold. There's a dispute over whether Tantamaheg Landing is public or private property, and some residents have criticized you, saying you've tossed this issue to the Harbor Management Commission, have criticized you for not putting up signage. Why wasn't this issue resolved earlier, and what is your plan to settle the matter?
The Tantamaheg Landing's been town property for over 300 years. When the new owners acquired the abutting property on both sides of the landing, we engaged the Harbor Management Commission because the landing ends at the water where kayaks are launched and so forth. And the husband of the couple was present, and we worked out, at least from the town standpoint, the rules of what would happen. Then subsequent to that, the owners did some title investigation and believe that they feel that the town landing belongs to them. We don't agree with this, and we will be meeting with them to sort this out, but this is a relatively new development.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, your response, 90 seconds.
So this issue came before Mr. Griswold in September of 2020. When the property owners purchased the property, they signed disclosures making it clearly noted that they did not own the landing when they purchased the 2 properties. I think the saddest part is that it sort of sat and festered for over a year between the parties, the neighbors in the neighborhood and the landowner. I think a good leader would have addressed this sooner so as not to cause so much disruption within a neighborhood. We're a small town, and we need to get along with each other, and as leaders, we need to make sure that our constituents' needs are met.
Mr. Griswold, you have 30 seconds to respond.
The owner has, throughout the process, said that the public is welcome. I realize there's been some ruffled feathers here and there, but he maintains that the public is welcome and people have been going to the landing. We maintain that we still own it, and we will see where this goes. But that's our position, and we will defend it.
Thank you. Now moving on to our final question before closing statements, and we are starting with Ms. Shoemaker for this question. A plan for Halls Road includes public improvements such as sidewalks and a pedestrian bridge over the river, and private investments that the Halls Road Improvement Committee hopes will be made possible by the creation of a new village district. Zoning changes would encourage attractive storefronts, cafes, and outdoor dining closer to the road with apartments above or behind the stores. Do you believe this is an achievable and worthwhile vision, and do you think the proposal has gotten sufficient input from both town officials and the public? And you have 60 seconds.
I think that Edie Twining and her Halls Road Commission has done a marvelous job of putting together a plan for future development. And really the only part of this plan that the town, we have to change the zoning, that we'll be responsible for, is to change the zoning, which has gone before the zoning board this past week, and also to find grants for sidewalks, lampposts, etc., and encourage development to meet the needs of what Edie's plan is at the moment.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold, your response?
There are two aspects to this. One is public improvements and the other is private improvements. The sidewalk, which would start up at Lyme Street at the Lyme Art Association, and heads over the river on the proposed Bow Bridge, and then continues on down to the Essex Savings Bank. That and the streetscape related to that would be the public improvement. It is a state road, Route 1, so the state would definitely have to be involved. But there are grants available and would be very necessary, so that is something that I think we would try to work to do. The private part is subsequent to a zone change. I have actually not reviewed the zone change myself, but the zone change, the vision would be a lot of buildings would be moved or erected new. It's up to the private owners of these properties to do this, and the committee has said all along that this could take years. I think in this climate it would be very ambitious for, say, the Old Lyme stores, which is where the Big Y is located, to build new buildings, tear down old buildings, and the rents would pay for it. So as to how that will all unfold, we will see. But it's a good vision, and I think it's worthwhile to move forward with it.
Thank you. Ms. Shoemaker, your response?
This is a project that's going to take 10 to 20 years. It's not going to be something that's going to be done in the next administration. I am surprised to hear, though, that Mr. Griswold hasn't read the zone change, because I believe you signed the application for the zone change for the town.
I'll let you respond to that.
I signed a lot of things, so I didn't go to the meeting, and so I have not read it yet.
We'll now move on to closing statements. You'll have 1 minute each. We will start with Ms. Shoemaker.
Okay, thank you very much. In closing, I just want to note that it should be concerning to citizens that the projects that were on the first Selectmen's Board of Meeting agenda when Tim took office in 2019 are still on the agenda in 2021. And also concerning to me is that residents' concerns are not being responded to. It's a time for Old Lyme's future to be removed from the control of a select few and return to the people. You've got the right to tell your town government what your concerns are, and you should expect answers. Under my leadership, we'll build consensus between people, committees with various viewpoints, and develop common goals, because as a team, we'll be stronger and work together to accomplish these objectives. I will listen, I will learn, and I will lead. And if you believe our leadership can and should do better, then I ask for you to vote for me on November 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Griswold?
Thank you. I think that experience here is critical. We're coming out of COVID. It was mentioned that there are items on the agenda. That's not surprising. You don't install sewers in the beach area in 2 years. a number of projects. Take, for instance, the Grassy Hill Bridge. A permit through the Army Corps of Engineer will take a year itself. So my door is always open. I have gone into the community, spoken with people. I'm in the Lions Club, the VFW, you name it. I am all over the place talking with people, and I don't buy the fact that I'm unapproachable. We have come a long way. We have a long way to go, but I think we have great boards and commissions, good staff, and I think things are in good hands where they are.
Well, thank you both so much for participating in this debate, and thank you to our viewers who tuned in. The election is on November 2nd, and you can follow the day's election coverage at theday.com/election2021.